He's rarely on the same page with Patrick Mahomes. He can be a frustrating player, I think, for the coaches and for his quarterback. So it's just no guarantee that he's going to jump in and run away with it. But I do think he'll get the first opportunity at it.
Hello and welcome to episode 357 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. As always, joined by Evan Silva, and I am here. Yes, I am here one day after getting my dick sliced in a vasectomy incident. Shout out to me, the most dedicated podcaster that you know. Evan, how's it going?
It's going well. The league meetings, the owners' meetings are ongoing. The NFL never sleeps. I mean, we continue to have several notable transactions every day. The owners are speaking. The coaches are speaking. There's a lot to get to.
Yeah, I actually thought we were done with these fallout pods, these reaction to free agency, reaction to trade pods, because it's been so wild. And then it kept getting wilder. Tyreek Hill trade, a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of other interesting stuff has gone down on today's show. We will be breaking it all down. Do have a lot to get to, as Evan said. Before we get into it, wanted to give everyone a warning of sorts, a heads up. We are officially launching an EstablishTheRun.com golf product. Look for the official announcement, the official reveal on Friday. But for now, I just wanted to be sure that if you're interested in DFS golf, do not buy anything else, because what we have planned, I think, is going to be really, really, really good, really, really unique and special with the people and the data that we have involved. So look for that on Friday. We will have the product ready for the Masters, which tees off next Thursday. All right. Evan, I didn't really believe it. I heard these Tyreek Hill rumors. I didn't think that they'd trade Tyreek Hill. I thought that the window for the Chiefs to win Super Bowls, you do whatever you can. You do whatever it takes. You kick the can on the salary cap, whatever you got to do to keep Tyreek Hill. Andy Reid and the Chiefs didn't see it the same way. They said, we don't have enough money. We're going to go ahead and get a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and clear out a ton of cap space. We trade Tyreek Hill. He goes ahead and signs a 4-year, $120 million extension with the Dolphins, $72 million in guarantees. I want to get to the Chiefs stuff in a minute here. Let's start with the Dolphins, though. What do you think of Tyreek Hill in fantasy now? Tua, Waddle, Gesicki, anything else? How do you think Tyreek Hill going to the Dolphins changes things up?
Well, it's true that I think he has more target competition in Miami, at least on paper. Mike Gesicki and Jalen Waddle, and is Devontae Parker going to be back? I think that's maybe 50-50. But, there are better players at the end of the depth chart than there were in Kansas City, where it was really just him and Travis Kelce. And then behind him, the perennial disappointment that is Mecole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson, like a dirty work receiver. But I still think he's going to have a very voluminous role. Mike McDaniel comes from the Kyle Shanahan school. They're very good at getting the ball into the hands of their playmakers and letting them do work after catch. I think that where Tyreek Hill is going to suffer the most is in the downfield passing game in terms of his efficiency. Tua has not been a prolific downfield passer, nor has Teddy Bridgewater, who could potentially make starts in 2022, and Patrick Mahomes, of course, has. So I'm more concerned about the efficiency. I think that he's going to get a ton of ball production. I think they're going to get him going in the running game more than Andy Reid did in Kansas City, and I think they're going to fill him up with targets. I'm just worried that he's not going to make as many big plays. In Kansas City, he was the threat to be the overall wide receiver one every week, and I don't think he's going to have as many opportunities to do that in Miami.
Yeah, and one of the themes of the offseason for sure, and we talked about it with Devontae Adams, we talked about it with DK Metcalf, it's quarterback elite wide receivers getting major downgrades in quarterback play. And so when you downgrade Tyreek Hill's quarterback massively from Patrick Mahomes to Tua, and then you also add in all this extra target competition, it's hard to get this super optimistic projection on Tyreek Hill. We have him 30th overall right now, right around DeAndre Hopkins, DJ Moore, Jalen Waddle, his teammate now, and Keenan Allen. I agree with Evan that I think maybe, if anything, we're a little bit low there, but you see what happens. I mean, increased competition, worse quarterback play. It's tough. Let's go to Kansas City. Go ahead on that if you want, but I want to go to Kansas City instead too.
Well, I think we should talk about the fallout as it pertains to Jalen Waddle and to Tua.
Go ahead.
The Dolphins are making a clear commitment. They've done work on the offensive line as well. Signing Teron Armstead was huge for them. He has struggled to stay healthy. But, I mean, if they can get 12, 14 games out of him, that's just a massive upgrade over any of the tackles that they were trotting out last year. And then with Jalen Waddle, I think it hurts Jalen Waddle. I mean, there is an element of that Tyreek Hill brings where he can change coverage, he can shift coverage, and he can make players around him better. But, you go with Jalen Waddle from him potentially being the alpha in the passing game to, having very little chance to become the alpha in the Miami passing game. And I think that he takes a significant hit in the short and the long term, because the Dolphins are giving Tyreek Hill a big contract. He's going to be there for several years.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Waddle was racking up 13 target games like consistently, 13, 11, 10, 9, 10, 11, 12. I mean, Jalen Waddle was getting a ton of volume for sure.
So I would expect a boost in efficiency from him, but he has nowhere near the target upside that he did previously. What do you think about the notion that, the Dolphins putting all this around Tua, can they make him good? Can the supporting cast elevate? I think we can say right now, at least at this stage of Tua's career, that he's not capable of elevating teammates. But can he be, you remember Andy Dalton was like in the running for MVP one year, when he had AJ Green and Marvin Jones and Tyler Eifert was healthy and they had a really good offensive line. Can the Dolphins, by putting all these pieces around him, elevate Tua to the point where he becomes a fantasy factor?
Yeah, I wouldn't underrate the Teron Armstead thing Evan mentioned. I think that Tua can be just as good for Mike McDaniel as Jimmy Garoppolo was for the 49ers. And in real life, that was pretty good, man. In fantasy, it wasn't great, but in real life, it was pretty good. And Jimmy was capable of having some spike weeks, not a lot of them, especially last year, but in the past he had. So yeah, I think Tua can be just as good as Jimmy. I mean, who would you rather have between Jimmy and Tua right now if you were, same team, same coaches and everything?
I think right now I would rather have Jimmy.
Okay. Chiefs side. So, we've talked a lot. One thing I want to bring up, we've talked a lot about it. Maybe it doesn't apply as much, but I always thought that the Chiefs thought Mecole Hardman could only play the Tyreek Hill role. Like he wasn't capable of doing other things. So he's the direct backup to Tyreek Hill. If somebody else got hurt, somebody else went down, it wasn't really Mecole Hardman's role. What do you think about that? How excited should we be for Mecole? And I also want to talk about Marquez Valdez-Scantling signing. I mean, my God, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Evan, 3 years, $30 million, $18 million in the first 2 years. That's way more than Juju Smith-Schuster got. So how do you think all these pieces align now with the Chiefs, Juju, MVS, Hardman?
Yeah, well, I do think that Mecole Hardman will get the first crack at that. I think they call it, the Z receiver role. It was Deshaun Jackson for Andy Reid in Philly. It's Tyreek Hill in Kansas City. And it's a more diverse role than what Deshaun Jackson played in Philadelphia, although he was used at a more diverse way than he has in recent years. But with Tyreek Hill, I think that Mecole Hardman will get that first crack, but we've seen that he is, a perennial disappointment. He's rarely on the same page with Patrick Mahomes. He can be a frustrating player, I think, for the coaches and for his quarterback. So it's just no guarantee that he's going to jump in and run away with it. But I do think he'll get the first opportunity at it. And then what they're trying to do throughout the rest of the receiver core, obviously Travis Kelce is still playing at a very high level, even at this later stage of his career. But they're trying to piece together the elements that Tyreek Hill brought. And Tyreek Hill was really dangerous in the underneath passing game, really dangerous in the vertical passing game. Marquez Valdez-Scantling will occupy, a big portion of the vertical element that Tyreek Hill brought, and then Juju Smith-Schuster, obviously he's going to have a chance at a ton of volume because Mecole Hardman, we can't really trust him, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling just isn't a volume receiver. He's going to have spiked weeks, just like he did in Green Bay, catching footballs from another great deep ball passer. But Juju Smith-Schuster is going to have a lot of opportunity for targets in the middle of the field, where Tyreek Hill, especially when the defenses, and I know you joke about it, when the defense has started to play cover 2 and limit what he was doing in the downfield passing, and the Chiefs resorted to feeding him footballs underneath. And, that's where Juju Smith-Schuster plays.
Yeah, no, certainly Juju Smith-Schuster set up really well. And when you start, a target from Patrick Mahomes is worth so much. When you start giving Juju a lot of targets, it looks so good. And we have Juju 45th overall right now in our rankings. Marquez Valdez-Scantling way down at 129th. We have Mecole Hardman at 140th. Obviously, there's upside on both MVS and Hardman, specifically in individual weeks, like for DFS or maybe even best ball type stuff. I think over the course of a season, Juju is very clearly the best one there. Travis Kelce up to 10th overall now. Again, targets from Patrick Mahomes so valuable. And with Tyreek on, there's more targets to go to Travis Kelce. I want to just quickly talk about Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones, old friend of the show, one of Evan's favorite players in the league, for those of you guys who have known for a long time. Chiefs give Ronald Jones 1-year deal, can earn up to $5 million with incentives. He'll play some type of backup role, I think, behind CH, but CH certainly has not been impressive. Do you think Ronald Jones is even on the fantasy radar here, Evan? What do you think about that signing?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I mean, and the depth chart is looking thinner right now than it has been in recent years in Kansas City. I think that we've determined that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is just not that good. He'll be fine as a role player, but they need to have a committee backfield. I mean, that pick is looking horrible in hindsight, especially there were some receivers that went after, like T. Higgins was like the next pick, after the Chiefs picked Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But from a fantasy standpoint, I think we have to expect that they are going to have a committee year in and year out, because he's not a bell cow back. And so they're bringing in Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones is a talented runner. He's definitely an NFL caliber rusher. It's just all the other stuff, the pass blocking, the fumbling, he can't catch a cold, just and a complete really lack of growth as a player since he entered the league, hasn't gotten better at that kind of stuff. So I think that he will have a role, but it'll be a limited role. It'll be like, a strict rushing role. And ideally they would get Clyde Edwards-Helaire going in the passing game, although he hasn't really even shown a great affinity for that in Kansas City. So I don't know. I think they'll also bring back maybe Darrell Williams. Yeah. And it'll continue to be a frustrating situation.
Yeah, we'll see what the public thinks. For now, my lean is that these guys are going to be overdrafted because of an offensive environment. People are going to say, "Oh, let me get a piece of they're going to score so many touchdowns. Let me get a piece of Chiefs running backs, and I'm going to overdraft CH. I'm going to overdraft Ronald Jones." My initial take is to kind of be lower than market on both. We'll see what the public ends up thinking there. I did want to mention, Packers obviously massive holes at wide receiver now with Devontae Adams, MVS both gone. I'd love to see them take a shot on Will Fuller. And, injury prone, I can't even tweet about Will Fuller without injury prone Twitter just going completely ham on me. But Packers should be taking a shot on Will Fuller, in my opinion. Just wanted to put that out there. Oh, I know I'm interrupting the video. Wah. But if you're enjoying this video and want to see more fantasy football and DFS content like it, please just take 2 seconds, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button. Really does go a long way for us, and we'd appreciate it. Thank you for watching. And now back to the show. Speaking of running backs, Leonard Fournette, and I thought this was going to happen once Brady came back. Leonard Fournette back to the Bucs, 3 years, $21 million. That's really good money for a running back in today's NFL. Leonard Fournette, of course, one of the best roles for fantasy in the NFL, period. Among the league leaders in carries from inside the 10, and tied with DeAndre Swift last year for targets per game, 6 targets per game. Most among all running backs, tied with DeAndre Swift, was Leonard Fournette. So, man, I don't really care what you think about Leonard Fournette's talent. It doesn't even matter anymore. This role is so outrageous. What did you think of Lenny going back to the Bucs?
Really, really good for his fantasy appeal. He could have ended up in a bad situation. Going to a much less prolific offense, an offense that wouldn't use him the way that the Bucs have, and they've done so successfully. I would expect his role to remain the same. Ronald Jones is gone. Their offensive line got a little bit worse, but it's just we don't want to overthink it. He's like a second round fantasy pick right now.
We have him 25th right now, and I'm pushing to get him higher. I would take Leonard Fournette in the middle of the second round. No doubts about it. Matt Ryan, the face of the Falcons for so many years, finally gone. Falcons, I think, make the right move and say, hey, let's just blow this thing up and start over. I mean, they've been mediocre for just way, way, way too long. Ever since the Super Bowl collapse, they've just been mediocre. Go to the Colts for a third round pick. Let's start with the Colts side of this. They go to another kind of declining, withered pocket passer. They had Phillip Rivers. Then they go to Carson Wentz. Now they go to Matt Ryan. What do you think the fallout is for Matt Ryan going to the Colts?
I mean, he's going to be doing a lot of handing off, and they're going to play from under center, and they're going to run play action. It's going to be a very traditional style offense. This is Jonathan Taylor's offense at this point. Matt Ryan is still playing at a pretty decent level, though. And he's on the back nine, no question. But the Falcons won and were competitive in more games than they should have been last year, considering the supporting cast. It was so weak. I mean, defensively, they were bad. They weren't very good on the offensive line. Their receiver core was dreadful. Even when Calvin Ridley was in there, he wasn't doing much. He was one of the biggest disappointments in fantasy even before he, left the team. So Matt Ryan was working with very, very little. He's going to have a lot more in Indianapolis. The Colts do have some holes that they need to fill on the up front, but they're good at center with Ryan Kelly. Quentin Nelson's coming back, and Braden Smith at right tackle. They have to sort of figure out some answers at the other two offensive line positions, but they're going to have a good offensive line. They're going to be really well coached. I think Matt Ryan's going to have a pretty solid year. Gets to continue to play indoors. Not a whole lot to worry about inside the division. A lot of easy games still in the AFC South. I think it made a lot of sense for Indianapolis. It makes a lot of sense for Matt Ryan. I don't think he's going to be a big time fantasy contributor, but I think that if they get what they got out of Phillip Rivers a couple years ago, then it will be considered a success in this move to acquire Matt Ryan.
I think it's a win for Michael Pittman. I mean, and I know Michael Pittman had a fine year last year. I was never threatened that Michael Pittman was going to completely go off because I didn't think Carson Wentz was really capable of it. Matt Ryan, I think, is still capable of going for 350 and 3 touchdowns in a game. And so it's just the ceiling to me is higher. Michael Pittman, we have him 61st overall right now. I also think it's a little bit of a win for Nyheim Hines. I think Matt Ryan is a little bit more likely to check down and be more accurate to running backs than Carson Wentz was, but we still have Jonathan Taylor as our number 1 overall player. Let's go to, while we're here, we should talk about Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota to the Falcons to replace Matt Ryan, 2 years, $18.75 million. I mean, that's not really starters money for Marcus Mariota, but again, I like what the Falcons are doing, saying we're going to rebuild. How do you think Marcus will fare as a Falcon?
Well, he reunites with Arthur Smith, who was, in Tennessee with Marcus Mariota a few years ago, but they moved on from Marcus Mariota at that time, went and acquired Ryan Tannehill via trade. And so it's not like, Arthur Smith, worked magic with Marcus Mariota. But that will give him system familiarity. It's just there's so little around him that it's hard to imagine him succeeding. He's the classic bridge quarterback. They're going to try to find their next quarterback of the future. I don't know. He may have some moments because he can run, but he's not set up to succeed in Atlanta. I mean, the skill talent around him is just worst in the league.
It's a joke. I mean, obviously they have Kyle Pitts. They did add Auden Tate. Shout out Team Preseason. Auden Tate signed with the Falcons. But I mean, Auden Tate, Alameda Zaki, it's these are not NFL caliber starting wide receivers. And so it's going to be a struggle for Marcus Mariota. Again, though, if he's cheap on DraftKings, real cheap, sub 5K, dude can run. And I think that Arthur Smith will lean into that a little bit for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to have low pass volume, or at least they're going to try to. Yeah. It's possible that they end up having high pass volume because I think their defense is going to be just horrible. I mean, they have so few pieces. It's got to be a full-scale rebuild, the Atlanta Falcons organization.
And by the way, some of these team level takes, win totals are out. DraftKings released win totals, and Ryan Reynolds wrote an article for us going team by team and looking at the opening line for everyone. That's up for free if you want to check that out. But I know Evan likes to look at win totals as well, and we'll be checking those out over the course of the offseason. Speaking of NFC South quarterbacks, as expected, Jameis Winston back to the Saints, and he actually got starters money. I mean, or at least close to it. Jameis Winston back to the Saints 2 years, $28 million. We've seen Jameis Winston be a really, really good fantasy player when he was with Bruce Arians in Tampa. With the Saints, they really coddled him. He was like almost useless. Didn't really have many wide receivers. I don't know, man. I'm skeptical. He's going to have Taysom Hill at tight end now. Taysom Hill is no longer a quarterback officially. What do you think about what's going on with the Saints and the quarterback position?
Yeah, they used him as a game manager last year, and I would fully expect them to continue to use Jameis Winston as a game manager. He did play pretty well as a game manager. I mean, throughout his career, even going back to Florida State, throwing interceptions, throwing the ball to the other team, just doing random boneheaded things, 3 or 4 times a game. That's been like a staple of his playing style. They kind of systemed him out of that last year under Sean Payton. Can they continue to do that with Pete Carmichael? I think that they're going to try, but that doesn't lend itself to big fantasy games.
What do you think about Jameis with Michael Thomas? I know you've been controversial in your Michael Thomas takes of late.
You mean correct?
Correct. Controversial at the beginning, but ended out correct. And by the way, what I'm referring to was last year with the injury to Michael Thomas. Evan was adamant that we should not be drafting Michael Thomas at all.
Leone kept taking him.
The upside case was that if he comes back in week 10 or so, he could actually be a difference maker. The upside case never came to fruition. Evan was proven right yet again.
No, I shouldn't brag. I got way too much stuff wrong last year. We did get that right though. But I don't know what to think about Michael Thomas. I really don't. We're gonna have to kind of feel our way through this. There was like a rift between him and the organization over several things, not just the ankle surgery. So I don't know. The guy can end up requesting a trade. I mean, I've talked to Nick Underhill about this, and Michael Thomas is kind of like kind of an odd dude. He's a unique individual. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think that the situation is very predictable here on March 29th.
Speaking of quarterbacks, last quarterback thing we're going to get to today, at these owners meetings, like the coaches just like, I don't know if it's like the combine, but they all seem to just like hang out and just like talk. And so you get a lot of stuff like this. Kyle Shanahan seemed to be, to me at least, pretty open about their plan for Jimmy Garoppolo. They're trying to trade him. No one wants to trade for him right now because they don't know what's going to happen with the injury. He might not even be ready to throw until July. And obviously that's hard to trade or give up much capital for when Jimmy G can't even throw until July. So for now, Jimmy G stays on the roster. There's a chance, and I believe Kyle Shanahan when he says, listen, if they don't get what they want, we'll just keep Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster. Yep. We'll have 2 quarterbacks that we like. But it seemed clear to me from the comments that he really did want to move on to Trey Lance. So what do you think about all that and what's going on with San Francisco?
Yeah, I don't know if Kyle Shanahan fully trusts Trey Lance yet. I mean, based on the rudimentary game plans that they installed for Trey Lance last year and how hesitant they were to turn the page on Jimmy. And Jimmy played well. I mean, they got very close to the Super Bowl last year.
Very.
Jimmy really did have a solid season. They know that they can win with Jimmy Garoppolo. They don't have to part with Jimmy Garoppolo. They're in fine financial. They're in a fine financial situation, and so, and I think the asking price has been like 2 second-round picks, and nobody's given that up for Jimmy Garoppolo, especially with the state of his shoulder surgery. He's not going to be ready for several more months.
Yeah,
So. I remember in late February, I saw an interview with Adam Schefter, and he was like, I wouldn't doubt that they might keep Jimmy Garoppolo into 2022, maybe to have a full-blown training camp competition. The thing is that they don't know if they can win with Trey Lance, and they know that they can win with Jimmy Garoppolo, and they don't have to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo. So if they don't get what they want for Jimmy Garoppolo, and there's no indications that they will, then I think that it makes sense for them to keep him.
Yeah. No, maybe you're right. I mean, I'd still put it like 75-25, 80-20.
Yeah, I mean, I would too. But I would too. I'd probably go like 65-35.
Okay. Let's go to sneaky signing, but I thought a good one for the Chargers. Bad one for the PSM, Team XFL, Donald Parham, but a good one for the Chargers. Gerald Everett, 2 years, $12 million to replace Jared Cook. Considering some of the money that was flying around to the tight end position, this is actually like a bargain to me on Gerald Everett. He gets to go play with Justin Herbert. The Jared Cook role was actually like pretty solid last year. Like, it was fine. Gerald Everett, I think, will do better with it. What do you think about that one? And is our boy Donald Parham officially dead?
I don't think he's officially dead. I mean, they're not moving on from him. They're keeping him. They know he has the ability. It's just, these guys that go undrafted, the teams just so rarely make, substantial commitments to them. And Donald Parham is that guy that he, just the team is not going to make a commitment to him in some sort of like featured role. What he needs to happen, is like Gerald Everett to get hurt, and then they just run out of dudes, and Donald Parham gets finally gets the opportunity, and maybe they sign him to a multi-year extension after this. But I just love the offseason for the Chargers. I mean, they had an awesome offseason. I think that Gerald Everett is going to be fine. We'll talk. It'll probably be like a fringe top 15, maybe top 12 fantasy tight end, but he's just going to be a cog in the wheel for the Chargers, though. But yeah, from top to bottom, defensively, Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson. I mean, this team had an awesome offseason, and Gerald Everett is a part of that. He's sort of toward the end of the premium transactions that they made, but I think he's a solid pickup. He's a great athlete, and he's going to be a solid cog in the wheel.
Yeah, Chargers they're so loaded. I was just looking up their division odds. Market has moved a little bit now. Chiefs plus 160, not that far behind to win the AFC West. Chargers plus 250, Broncos plus 250. I mean, to me, the Chargers are a little bit better than the Broncos. Both are very good, though, man. And the Chargers, from talent
perspective. The thing is with Herbert, man, like, God, he can continue to elevate, Yeah. So he can continue to get better. I mean, the sky is the limit for this dude.
Speaking of AFC West tight ends, had some comments from Nathaniel Hackett about Albert O. And I mean, this is going to make it move for fantasy people, because Albert O, everybody knows, is a total freak, size, speed, looks like an awesome prospect. And then Nathaniel Hackett comes out and says, well, he's going to play the move tight end role for us. He's going to be a hybrid receiver tight end. Obviously, that's like what we want to hear. Albert O is going to be like the quote unquote sleeper that isn't really a sleeper, because everybody with any kind of pulse at all is going to be on him. But still good to hear it on Albert O. What do you think about that? Anything else on the Broncos?
I don't have a whole lot to add. I'm on team Albert O, and his ADP is going to get out of control. You can already feel it. This dude's going to be getting, in the tight end premiums, like third, fourth round. I mean, he's going to go really early. I can guarantee that.
Bills made a move that was kind of disappointing for Isaiah McKenzie, because I like Isaiah McKenzie, but maybe we should have seen it coming, because they only gave Isaiah McKenzie about $2 million a year. Jamison Crowder gets a 1-year deal from the Bills worth $2 million. He can earn up to $4 million with incentives. Not much money either for Jamison Crowder. But what do you think about this one? Do you think Crowder and McKenzie end up canceling each other out, or how do you think that plays out?
The Bills are just they're on it, man. And they know exactly what they need. I mean, they run 4 receiver sets. They need multiple slot receivers. They don't know. They probably love Isaiah McKenzie. I mean, who doesn't at this point? But they don't know if they can rely on him to be the full-time slot. They bring in Jamison Crowder, who, when healthy, is still a really effective player. Used to be a great punt returner. And when he's been healthy, he's been, as good a slot receiver really, as there is. I mean, he's a really good football player. And the Bills, another team that they didn't make a ton of moves, but every move that they made was smart. And, they continue to impress.
Yeah, and they did get Duke Johnson also in a minor move. Of course, Duke Johnson comes into play, maybe some type of like the Matt Breida role or something like that. Matt Breida was not always active on game days.
Well, they had clearly been like targeting that role, because they wanted to get J.D. McKissick. Yep. He bowed out, and they settled for Duke Johnson, who, I mean, I think he'll be fine in that role. I think he'll end up playing, a good amount of snaps.
Yeah, by the way, we're trying to stay high on Gabriel Davis. We have him at 57th overall, not as high on the slot receivers. We have Crowder 160th, McKenzie 185th, and I think we'll likely stay that way through most of the offseason. All right, that is going to do it for what I think, well, not what I hope, actually, because I like these, but it could be the final Fallout pod. There's been so many crazy moves. Draft is 1 month away. We're going to start turning our attention more to the prospects in this draft props, et cetera, et cetera. I'll be back later this week to talk with our new golf person. And I'll be back later this week for a solo pod in which I will give you the play-by-play, the full recap of my vasectomy. I know many of you have been asking, and this is going to be an episode for the ages.
Can't believe you did it, man.
For Evan, for producer Luke, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.